Yo, I'm Matt.
And I'm Joel, and we're FringeCraft.
Today we're going to be watching Robert Bigelow, Billionaire UFO Researcher by Red Panda Koala.
Robert Bigelow made his fortune by founding the Budget Suites of America. He's also made a company called Bigelow Aerospace Research. And another thing Robert Bigelow's done that's greatly impacted the French sciences is he started the National Institute for Discovery Science, also known as NIDS. NIDS' stated goal is to study fringe sciences, most notably UFOs.
And additionally, he's a prominent and founding creator and member of a number of ufology organizations and cultural creations. So,
definitely a central figure in UFO culture.
Yes, very much so. Before we get started, we just want to say, check out Red Panda Koala's channel. Go subscribe to him. If you haven't subscribed to us, subscribe, like this video, and comment what you think. Alright, now let's get into the video.
In this video, we are going to be discussing one of the most interesting people in the UFO community, Robert Bigelow. Robert Bigelow is a self-made billionaire and the biggest personal financer of UFO and paranormal research in history. Bigelow made his fortunes in real estate and later aerospace, but due to anomalous experiences had by him and his family, he has had a lifelong interest in the UFO phenomenon. For over 30 years, he has financed multiple UFO and paranormal research investigations, oftentimes contracted by the U.S. government. His long career has him being involved with cattle mutilations, UFO reports, crop circles, Skinwalker Ranch, MUFON, the University of Nevada, the Federal Aviation Administration, the Central Intelligence Agency, NASA, and the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program. So who is Robert Bigelow? What has he researched? What connections does he have regarding the UFO phenomenon? Let's find out and take a closer look at Robert Bigelow.
Some of what I say may be kind of controversial.
NIDS claims to research a wide range of natural and supernatural phenomena, including UFOs, cattle mutilations, and non-lethal weapons.
Part of the focus was on a mysterious ranch in northeastern Utah, a property once owned by businessman Robert Bigelow. The I-Team has learned that Bigelow's UFO study employed more than 50 people at
The money for the Pentagon UFO program went to a company called Bigelow Aerospace, run by a longtime friend of Reed's, Robert Bigelow, a big believer in UFOs.
It made for the kind of conversation you don't ordinarily have with an accomplished CEO.
Do you believe in aliens?
I'm absolutely convinced that's all there is to it.
Do you also believe that UFOs have come to Earth?
There has been and is an existing presence, an ET presence. And I've spent millions and millions. I probably spent more as an individual than anybody else in the United States has ever spent on this subject.
Is it risky for you to say, in public that you believe in UFOs and aliens?
I don't care.
You don't worry that some people will say, did you hear that guy? He sounds like he's crazy.
I don't care.
Why not?
It's not going to make a difference.
She almost seems to be trying to dissuade him from his opinion, and he clearly is resolute and believes what he believes.
It makes me like him more because he has such a strong frame.
Yeah.
And he's so sure of himself.
Yeah, he's positive that his worldview is correct, and he is going to put out the resources to figure out whether it is or not. So
also, her methods for breaking his frame are really weak. They're just like, don't you feel weird believing that? Believing what you see as truth? Like, it's just, don't you want to fit in?
Yeah, exactly.
Stop believing that.
And it doesn't work at all. He's clearly resolute in what he's thinking and saying, and he's not going to change. Maybe he even changes her.
Hell, he's a billionaire. I want to fit in with him.
Yeah, exactly. She's just some random reporter, and this guy's a financial success.
It's super, and he like works with Elon Musk and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like their aerospace companies have interacted.
Yeah. So it's definitely. I think it's powerful just seeing him be so resolute and, clearly strong in his worldview. But let's move on.
Let's keep going.
It's not going to change reality of what I know.
Do you imagine that in our space travels we will encounter other forms of intelligent life?
You don't have to go anywhere.
You can find it here.
Yeah.
He's like even laughing at her.
Love it.
Or laughing at the situation.
Damn, I'm excited for this video.
Yeah.
Robert Bigelow was born into a poor family on May 12, 1945, in Las Vegas, Nevada. Bigelow was first exposed to science at a young age through witnessing a number of nuclear weapons tests with his family, conducted 70 miles northwest of Las Vegas. Robert Bigelow was first exposed to UFOs when his grandparents told him of their encounter. Back in 1947, his grandparents pulled over in their vehicle to avoid a strange orange orb in their path. They had stopped on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. The orb glowed brightly and headed straight towards them. Then, at the last second before impact, it made a right-angle turn and vanished in seconds. Bigelow has briefly alluded to having his own entity encounter during this time. He has never given the full details of his encounter, but because of this event and his grandparents' encounter, he developed a lifelong interest in pursuing the UFO phenomenon. At a young age, he made a promise to himself that he would choose a career that would allow him to become wealthy enough to pursue UFOs and space transportation. He told no one, not even his wife, of his ultimate goal as he set out to achieve his financial dreams. In 1967, Robert Bigelow graduated from Arizona State University with a degree in banking and real estate. He began building his real estate empire immediately after leaving school. Just 3 years later, he owned 100 apartments in Las Vegas and had broken ground on a 40-unit apartment building. He began purchasing and developing commercial real estate, hotels, motels, and apartments all over the Las Vegas area. In 1987, he created Budget Suites of America, which offered travelers an affordable hotel option. By this time, he had properties in multiple states, and his real estate developments were worth over $1 billion. By the mid-1990s, he had decided he had achieved the first part of his goal, and he let his family and associates know he would begin using his fortune towards investigating UFOs and other anomalous phenomena. The first area Bigelow began spending money, once out of the paranormal closet, was UFO abductions, perhaps a clue to his own experience. In 1991, Robert Bigelow, along with other interested parties, proposed a survey project to estimate the number of alien abductees in America, called the Roper Survey. The survey was sent to 100,000 psychiatrists to give to patients who claimed unusual personal experiences, i.e., abducted by aliens. This was based on a sample of just under 6,000 participants. However, question 6 was used as a control question. Anyone who felt Trondheim had a secret meaning for them was eliminated. According to the survey, 3.7% of Americans exhibited abduction-like phenomena. In 1993, Bigelow funded the startup of a paranormal radio show called Area 2000 with Art Bell, George Knapp, and Linda Moulton Howe. Bigelow bowed out, fearing a lack of quality guests could be found, but eventually Art Bell carried the idea forward, and that radio show became Coast to Coast AM.
Which is the most prominent.
In 1994, Robert Bigelow helped create a coalition of the UFO
Just gave up early.
organizations, MUFON, the Center for UFO Studies, and the Fund for UFO Research. They all formed the UFO Research Coalition. One of the combined projects included working on something called the Ambient Monitoring Project, aimed at measuring environmental changes during ongoing abduction experiences. Bigelow claims that the UFO organizations could not work together and agree to his demands, so he withdrew his funding, and in 1995 created his own UFO and paranormal investigation group, the National Institute for Discovery Science, often called NIDS. The scientific advisory board of NIDS included UFO researcher Jacques Vallée, Hal Puthoff, who ran the CIA remote program, Melvin Morse, Dr. Eric Davis, CIA analyst Kit Green, and former astronaut Edgar Mitchell. NIDS investigated a wide range of topics, such as black triangle sightings, cattle mutilations, consciousness studies, and crop circles. By 1996, Robert Bigelow had also purchased Skinwalker Ranch after reading about it in a newspaper. Skinwalker Ranch is infamous as a hotspot of many anomalous activities.
So, each time there would be a performance of a sort, there was always some unique pattern. It was something that was always changed. So we would be prepared that if this type of event happened again, we know what to do. Well, that exact same event never happened again. It would always be something completely different. We were always outguessed. Every time we would come up with some method of observation or calibration, that we were always outguessed as to what was going to, how we were going. And so it became obvious that we obviously weren't the ones in control. We were along for the ride, and that a lot of these exhibitions were exhibitions for gamesmanship or instruction, in that kind of context. The phenomena was playing with us and giving us only a taste here and there of various things, an opportunity to see things that were abnormal, opportunity to cause examinations upon performances of things that were very unique through certain pathological kinds of investigations. And those were opportunities that were very helpful. So in terms of witnessing things, we witnessed things both on camera and in person that we were privileged to witness, that we could have easily not had any opportunities if the phenomena did not want us to observe anything.
There's no blood around it, which is what we were talking about in the previous video.
Bigelow donated $3.7 million to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas to establish the Bigelow Chair of Consciousness Studies. It featured coursework in metaphysics, near-death experiences, and extrasensory perception. His donation went towards constructing buildings and for funding the consciousness studies that he kept a close eye on. In 1998, Robert Bigelow decided to combine two of his passions, real estate and space. He created Bigelow Aerospace, a company that he hoped would eventually create inflatable space habitats. Bigelow states that he decided to finally jump into the aerospace business after seeing Congress kill funding for inflatable space habitats. He thought the science was good and began designing his own inflatable space habitats that could expand size in space, lightening the launch load. Bigelow also created Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies, often referred to as BASS, to research advanced space sciences. While developing these inflatable space habitats, Robert Bigelow was continuing to pursue UFOs. In 2001, the Federal Aviation Administration began directing all UFO reports to Bigelow Aerospace and NIDS. Bigelow is now receiving official reports of UFOs from all civilian and commercial flights in the United States. In 2008, Robert Bigelow reapproached MUFON with a business proposal. This proposal involved unlimited access to MUFON's case file database and utilizing MUFON field investigators. Bigelow contracted 50 scientists designated to be on the scene within 24 hours after significant UFO incidents to perform investigations and analyze any data and material that the MUFON investigators had collected. With these moves, Bigelow secured being sent just about every UFO report in the country and began his official relationship with the U.S. government. During this time, U.S. Senators Harry Reid of Nevada, Ted Stevens of Arkansas, and Daniel Inouye of Hawaii began meeting in secret to secure funding for an official Pentagon investigation into UFOs. In 2007, the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program, or ATIP, was created, with black budget funds as to not appear on the official congressional budget. Bigelow Aerospace and BASS would receive the contract from the government for part of the UFO program.
That's crazy.
Many suspect that the government made this move to get around the Freedom of Information Act.
Well,
and
the video that we
Bigelow
just
already
saw
had the
on
infrastructure
CNN
in place from NIDS
is
and
the
BASS.
Tic Tac video.
ATIP and BASS began collecting
believe.
testimony, radar data, and
David
other
Fravor.
information regarding UFO encounters that various people within the military and government had during that time. In the process of investigating hundreds of UFO reports, ATIP documented 5 observables that UFOs seem to display. The first observable is sudden and instantaneous acceleration. The second observable is hypersonic velocity. UFOs have been officially clocked at over 13,000 miles per hour. For context, the fastest plane ever made by man is the SR-71 Blackbird, which has been clocked at 5,000 miles per hour. The third observable is low observability. Eyewitnesses and radar returns can pick up these UFOs, but often they are blurry or fuzzy, which suggests some sort of cloaking measure. The fourth observable is multi-medium travel. Human craft are designed differently if they are to perform underwater, in the air, or in space, as seen by the different designs of submarines, planes, and rockets. These UFOs are able to perform just as easily in atmosphere, low Earth orbit, and even underwater. The last observable is positive lift, the ability to defy the natural effects of Earth's gravitational force with no apparent means to generate lift. Human craft such as planes need wings to generate lift, or a hot air balloon can generate lift using heat. These UFOs have no visible wings and leave no heat signatures. Another goal of ATIP and BASS was to theorize the sciences at work that allow these UFOs to perform how they do. Many scientists from accredited universities and research institutes from across the country began writing papers attempting to explain the 5 observables with our current understanding of science. Many of the papers are still classified, but a couple of the topics covered were advanced nuclear propulsion, invisibility cloaking, reversible wormholes, and warp drives. The world learned of ATIP due to a 2017 New York Times article that many consider to be the day that UFO disclosure began. According to the article, the program ended in 2012. However, there are still people working at the Pentagon who claim it is still functioning. Many people also claim that Bigelow is currently in possession of fragments of crashed UFOs. To the Stars Academy is a company created by Tom DeLonge in 2017 to help the government reveal the complex reality of the UFO phenomena to the public over a period of years. Officially, Robert Bigelow is not a part of To the Stars Academy. However, looking at the lineup of NIDS, BASS, ATIP, and To the Stars, there is a lot of overlapping personnel, leading some to say that Bigelow is pulling the strings from behind the scenes.
Could be.
Some members of To the Stars Academy that have connections to Robert Bigelow's previous organizations are Hal Puthoff, co-founder of To the Stars, and who was part of NIDS and ran the CIA remote viewing program. Eric Davis, scientific advisor for To the Stars, who was also on the scientific panel for NIDS and BASS. Colm Kelleher, who is the biotech consultant for To the Stars, and who was deputy director of NIDS and ran NIDS's cattle mutilation investigations. Luis Elizondo, who is the director of global security and special programs for To the Stars and who ran ATIP. I find it almost impossible to think that Robert Bigelow is not connected to the Stars. These days, Robert Bigelow claims he is focusing on his aerospace ventures. He has received contracts from NASA for the space habitats he developed, and currently has 2 in orbit with many more planned. He has also partnered up with Elon Musk and established himself as a pioneer of space privatization. Apart from his financial success, Robert Bigelow has pushed the subject of ufology forward more than just about anyone.
Pause that for a sec.
By investing his own money and partnering with government agencies, he has helped our species learn about this anomalous phenomena that has been visiting us for ages. I firmly believe Robert Bigelow is connected to the current UFO disclosure we appear to be in the middle of, and that he knows way more than he is letting on. I reckon.
Dude, the fact that he worked with Elon Musk there, like, they've worked on projects, it makes it surprising that Elon Musk doesn't say much about UFOs. In fact, he counter-signaled them on Joe Rogan. Was that today or yesterday?
A few days ago, yeah.
A few days ago, he just did a new interview with Joe Rogan, and they got on the topic of UFOs. And he kind of counter-signaled them. But if he interacts with Robert Bigelow, who's outspoken and so sure of himself on it, it's actually kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, what they were talking about, obviously we saw Tom DeLonge, which, you know, it's always strange.
Dude, I love seeing Tom DeLonge there.
Blink-182 frontman become, I guess, leader of the UFO disclosure team. But you saw earlier also Robert Bigelow is connected to Jacques Vallée, Edgar Mitchell, like
Edgar Mitchell, was an actual astronaut who he believes strongly in UFOs and aliens. He goes as far as to say he has seen them in space when he was in space. Actually, a lot of astronauts say that, but I mean, I guess there's no proof, just their word.
Yeah, and additionally, one thing that I noticed, you know, he is from Nevada, or at least like has spent a large portion of his life in Nevada, and that's where a lot of the UFO activity, like
true.
Area 51 and Roswell's New Mexico, but I mean, all these like complexes that are supposedly like advanced American development.
Yeah, testing sites and stuff like that, exactly. And the Skinwalker Ranch thing is interesting too, because the way that those cattle die is kind of similar to what we were talking about in Colares.
Yeah.
It's it seems like the same phenomenon carried out to its end.
Yeah.
Whereas with the people, it was just like a pinprick where they'd get their blood sucked. I don't know.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things that you could see with those, like they were poking around at a carcass, but you notice that there's not a bunch of blood all over the ground. And like if you were to butcher something to that degree at that spot, there'd be a bunch of blood around. But it didn't look like it was moved to that spot. I mean, it just looks...
I mean, it could have been.
It could have been, yeah.
There's any number of possibilities, but it's just a strange phenomenon. I mean, that's pretty much the...
I find it so interesting. He's connected to so many different, you know... We didn't even bring up Skinwalker Ranch earlier, but that's just like... in UFO lore, it's a very...
He's maybe playing devil's advocate here. Maybe he's just the master hoaxer. He's paid everyone else off to to boost his hoax.
Or he's just the puppet on the strings who's, he's supposed to look like this wealthy businessman who's put his life into this, but really he didn't believe, and he's just trying to convince us.
For publicity.
Yeah, exactly.
So we stay up budget suites.
Or so, I guess the idea is like to get people to look away from the truth, so they're, always distracted from what's actually going on. So, it's just a thought, I guess, if people want to talk about, string pulling councils of people or whatever.
The shadows.
Yeah, the shadow government.
Alright, well, let's go on.
Yeah, let's move on to the rest of the video.
And everyone keeps a close eye on Robert Bigelow.
If all goes well, Bigelow says he plans to build 2 much larger spacecraft, BA-330s.
FAA confirmed to us that for years it referred reports of UFOs and other unexplained phenomena to a company Bigelow owns.
Objects that were recovered from these encounters, or somehow UFOs have been recovered and studied.
After hearing that story a few times, I realized there was a tremendous amount of things that we didn't know.
When you're talking about things that we didn't know much about, are you talking about alien activity?
Absolutely, yes.
Do you believe in aliens?
If you really bother to do the in-depth research, you come away with unequivocally that that is the only answer for all the various kinds of events that occur to people.
That's like the opposite of the way Elon Musk's phrased it. So I find it very odd that they would work together on something that something space related. So
yeah, it's surprising, but he's got that strong frame, and I tend to buy into what he's saying, at least to a degree.
Yeah, for sure.
At very close range.
All right, I think that's it.
Wow, that was a pretty short video.
Like the music though?
Yeah. Well, I thought that was a pretty good summary of Robert Bigelow. At least it generated a lot of intrigue for me.
Yeah, same here.
To research more about him and his organizations, NIDS, MUFON. I think they named several of others, but I think the leader right now is To the Stars Academy.
Definitely.
Which is the Tom DeLonge organization.
And I don't know if he is in charge of, MUFON at this point, but he definitely, that's kind of what I was talking about. He was there at the genesis of a lot of these organizations, which are prominent today. Like, you can look up MUFON's website. You can even, if you have a UFO story or something, you can go to their UFO tracker and put in, pictures, whatever evidence you have. And I think that if we're gonna see something like real evidence come out of some kind of event, I mean, it would come out of something like that, like
MUFON. Yeah, it's like crowdsourcing UFO sightings. And he also controlled controlled. He received all the official reports as well from commercial airliners and
the FAA, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is I think that's a pretty big deal that, their government is trusting this private company with.
Well, and they bore fruit also because they came up with a list of commonalities between UFO sightings, which is that acceleration, that's, very sudden starting and stopping, hypersonic velocities, which is a word I'm not really accustomed to using, and the
changing of medium, so they go from air to water to whatever.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, they were showing different videos. I brought up at least one video talking about David Fravor, but there's other videos I think that came out at the time. I believe he's connected to a video where he's flying an F-18 and his co-pilot is able to, he can't auto-track this object, but he's able to capture it in this flare sensors box that if you're skilled enough, you're able to tell it to track what's in this box, but it wouldn't auto-track it, which means he believes they were jamming, which is an act of war and also something that I don't believe other countries can do.
Well, if you have a UFO, odds are you can pull off some other some other stunts, and you're not too worried about acts of war.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so this is it's a very prominent video. I think we should even cover it at some point soon.
Yeah.
But he's a Air Force pilot who there's video of his incident, which is something that is a rarity.
Well, you have to, and everyone in ufology has to have seen that video, so it's definitely worth reacting to, even though it's quite commonly, it's the most common fringe UFO movie.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even call it fringe, it's a mainstream UFO movie.
Well, it's what they released as part of their disclosure, which I believe there's another video also connected, which I might have been getting confused with, but I think they released 2 videos.
They did.
Of military.
Of the Tic Tacs, there's a 2005 or maybe a little earlier, and then a 2016. They're several years apart, and they have different quality footage.
And I think that it might be because of his work, Robert Bigelow's work, that this stuff is coming out in that manner.
Oh, definitely. And the other thing, I saw this just in the news recently, was Robert Bigelow announcing cash rewards for proof that there's an afterlife, and some of their just some of the other science or fringe science he's into. I think it may be worth delving into at some point some of the stuff he does besides UFOs, because Red Panda Koala is obviously, he made that documentary and I think he did a good job, but it's focused only on the UFO aspect of Robert Bigelow, but I think there's plenty more fringe content to come out of him.
Yeah.
So
his UNLV department,
Center for Consciousness Studies, yeah, exactly. So he does near-death experiences and stuff like that, meditation, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's definitely something cool we should look into. So.
Yeah, so if you guys leave a comment, let us know. Should we cover more fringe science from Robert Bigelow? And
if you're Robert Bigelow, we'd love to interview you, and if you want to create a show, we're happy to help do it, and
we won't question your frame too much, but
or at all. But okay, so please like this video, subscribe, and let us know what you think. Comment whether you like it or you don't like it, whether you think Robert Bigelow is an idiot or a genius, whether you think he's wasting his billions or using it to a way that all billionaires should use it.
Oh, definitely.
Let us know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I've been Matt.
And I'm Joel.
And we're FringeCraft. Later.
See you guys.